is going on?
Hey, welcome back to the Brew Crew podcast, everyone. This is day 7 of the Advent calendar. Look what the cat dragged in, or more appropriate, look what the reindeer dragged in. Old Chuggalos Phil.
Man, it takes a whole reindeer now to drag me in. I can't do it anymore.
That's what it takes, a whole reindeer. It is day 7.
Day 7
of the Advent calendar.
First week,
and we've both been shotgunning the first 6 days.
Yeah.
I did it because I was out of town. You did it because I was out of town.
Pretty much.
That's basically how it went down. But we got Chuggalos Phil.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
Awesome to be here once again. This is our first podcast together in a long time.
Very long time. Probably since episode 250, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so. Great to be back with y'all. We're back in the bar.
Back in the Carriage House Bar.
The Carriage House Bar. There's an air about it here that it just brings about reverence.
It is reverent to be in the Carriage House Bar.
It is.
I think that the decor on this wall is great.
Oh, awesome.
The flags, I think, are a little college. You know, they're not amateur. They're not like, high school party.
No.
High school bedroom. But they're a little fraternity. I need to probably upgrade to like more pictures and framed things.
It's like it's wanting to be. It's trying to evolve itself, right? You've got Rheingeist, which is good. Mm-hmm. That's an upgrade. You got U.S. Navy, of course. That's great.
Of course, that's great, but they're flags, and I need.
Yes.
So for the viewer who can't see, because I obviously haven't turned the camera, they're flags.
They are.
Bush Light, Bush Apple, Rheingeist, Navy, Bears, Cubs.
Yep.
Flags.
Yep.
They line the wall. But anyway, Carriage House Bar is still reverent.
It's reverent, and yet
it's
we're not tense, we're not pensive, we're not anxious.
Dang.
In the Carriage Room Bar, it's reverent, yet it's comfortable, and it feels like home.
Feels like home.
The first thing I did when I walked in was I went, ah.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get into the beer, and we can continue talking about that. That way, at least we have something to drink. Today we got Equilibrium Solar Flare India Pale Ale, 6.8%, balanced by science. You ready?
Balance. You'll be the judge of that.
Yeah, I'll be the judge of that. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Not a bad crack. Now, Equilibrium is a brewery. Feel free to drink up. You don't have to wait for me.
Hell yeah.
I'm thirsty as shit. My mouth is super dry. I'm really, really ready to drink some beer. Equilibrium is run by some gentlemen from MIT.
Really?
I believe it was started 2009. I did read about it, and the reason why I'm saying I believe is because I kind of forgot already that I think it's 2009. They are scientists, I'm sure engineers. MIT probably doesn't have many arts programs, I would guess. They're probably all engineers and scientists.
Yeah.
Fellows in science. Both they're fellows and that we're fellows together. I assume maybe they're elitist MITians and they don't associate with the peons from the lower schools. But
what's their data science program like? Is it a good data science program?
I have no idea.
I know they have it.
I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's probably a play on their statistics program. Yeah. I would say they probably don't even have a data science program. Much like Johns Hopkins, they probably have fields of expertise, and then you kind of go into data science, machine learning through those fields.
Yep.
So that's what I would assume. Maybe they do have. If you know, let us know. MIT alum and current students.
Curious.
So they're big on science. They like to say that they're engineering the beer, basically. They're adding science to the recipe. And I think science exists in the recipe already.
Of course.
We've talked about it.
Yep, we have.
The yeast eats the sugar.
That's right. And
it ferments.
Converts it. The fermentation process is all about the yeast eating and departing out the back end alcohol.
Departing out the back end.
That's right. So just think about
would you call that potential energy?
It's specific gravity, actually.
Shit.
Yeah. Well, specific gravity is the sugar content that you measure before the yeast activate and go crazy on it, right? And that gives you a good indication, but it's not a 1-for-1, right? So There's always some sugars that will not be fermented or eaten by the yeast. A lot of times it'll happen because there might be too much sugar, and by the time the yeast actually ferment that into alcohol, the alcohol content will rise and rise and rise until it gets to a certain point and kills the yeast.
So the yeast.
Therefore,
you could also over sugar the beer.
You can over sugar a beer,
and then
absolutely.
You could just have a sweeter beer.
That's what a lot of people do.
Smart.
Yep, a lot of people do that, and then the other side of it is yeast will. There's certain types of sugars that just can't be consumed or digested by yeast. So there'll be
name those sugars. Go.
No,
I'm joking.
Can't do it.
I'm joking.
But I will tell you this: when there's a lot of residual sugar in the beer and it's natural, organic. In other words, a lot of brewers try to trick it up and add sugar at the end or whatever.
Oh boy!
But
cheaters.
You got it. Cheaters. They're cheaters. But for those that don't,
he said it.
I'm accusing. That's right. You heard it here first from SFIL.
I think there's some smart ways to add sugar. You can add fruit. You can add honey. You can add sugar, milk sugar, lactose.
Tons.
You could add sugar and not be a cheater. You could be doing it for the sake of the recipe.
That's right. Fructose.
And I think that happens. It's been happening more often. You have your milkshake IPAs.
Yep.
Your milk stouts.
Yep.
You have all of these marshmallow sours.
Yep.
A lot of that stuff is added after.
That's right, and a lot of the juices, the fruits, those types of the sours, those are typically sugars from fruit, where fruit's put in there and it's fermented. In addition to fermenting the sugar, the fructose, you're also getting fermentation of the actual pulp and the stuff of the fruit, which gives it the sour characteristic. So.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Look at that. That's science. That's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about.
Equilibrium, if you're watching, which I hope you are, that's science.
That's science.
They know that already.
They do.
We're not teaching them anything.
No, they know way more.
They've been doing
we do.
this since 2009 at least.
That's right. And we're dumbasses. We didn't go to MIT, so.
No, not quite. Didn't go to MIT, but maybe someday. There's always time.
I love it. I love the idea of it.
You know what? Maybe I'll go get my PhD from MIT in a very specific field of study.
If I went back to MIT, I'd have to be in physics.
Back to MIT.
Yeah.
So
no, go to MIT. I've never been to MIT.
Me neither.
I mean, I've been by the building.
I've worked with some people from MIT. All officers in the military.
Really?
Well, Air Force primarily. I'm sure I worked with them in the Navy, but one thing I found is that when I was in the Navy, very few officers, other than the Annapolis grads, would brag about their college. Whereas outside of the Navy, especially non-military, I mean, they're wearing it as the shirt. They got flags on their desks, signs, all kinds of shit. I went to Alabama, blah, blah, blah. I can't name, other than Annapolis, the officers I had that went to Annapolis, I can't name a single college any of my officers went to. Now,
That's
Air
really
Force officers, however, they'll be the first ones to tell you where they went. And I did work with a few MIT grads.
Now, why is that? What's your
I think
prognostication?
I would guess that this is just a guess. This means no disrespect to anybody. I think that the Air Force, their standards of admittance are like the lowest bar is higher than the low bar for all the other services.
Really?
So,
wow.
I think it's a lot of very smart officers competing with very smart officers. Whereas in the Navy, I think they're withholding braggadociousness because the diversity of the type of education that the officers received is so much greater.
Yeah.
The Navy accepts, the Air Force accepts you if you're smart and pass all of their entrance exams. They don't choose based on university. But I think that, again, they're all engineers and scientists competing against each other. Whereas in the Navy, you could have like logisticians, you could have supply chain guys, you could have missile experts, physicists, mathematicians, and you could have just supply officers. Whatever they might have gone to. I think that they're not. They're just trying to be like, we're all the same, even if they're not. Whereas in the Air Force, they're like, oh no, there's a clear difference between the genius of these officers versus these officers. That's just a total guess. I don't know.
I know they actually let Marines into the Naval Academy.
Oh yeah, the Marine officers go through Annapolis as well. Yeah.
That was interesting to me.
It's all the Department of the Navy.
Yeah, I mean, and I know there's a lot of different.
Smart to do.
It is. There's a lot of different tracks they have too. You could be a biologist and excel and get a great degree and have a great career in the Navy as a biologist.
Oh, absolutely. You can have a great career in the Navy being anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But people forget because of the global war on terror that Marines actually, even the phrase, the term Marine is
right.
a aquatic profession.
Yep.
You need to be able to storm the beaches. You need to be able to operate on land and sea.
That's right.
Sailors typically sea only. Marines both. Army land only.
Yep.
Air Force.
Some air support across all of them, right? Like Navy, Marines have their own, they have their own pilots, they have their own air units, and Army does as well, etc. But they're really special purpose, for support.
An interesting stat that I don't know if it's still true, but at least during Vietnam it was true. The Army has more boats than the Navy. The Navy has more aircraft than the Air Force.
Are you? The Army has more boats than the Navy?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But yeah.
That's
because
weird.
And it's weird during Vietnam because the Navy was doing a lot of small boat things.
Yeah.
So the difference between a boat and a ship is, ships are much larger. So obviously the Navy has the most ships. But boats, the Army apparently has more.
I did not know.
Probably
that.
Not true anymore.
I don't know. That's a really interesting statistics. But the Navy has more planes than the Air Force.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me because
it doesn't surprise me either.
They catch a ride on the aircraft carriers. So.
Yeah, they're on the aircraft carriers. There's plenty of naval air stations that are air only. Yep. So the Navy basically has its own Air Force.
Yep, that's a true statement.
So,
and the Marines too. I mean, really. I mean, when you think about it, the Marines have, and they have a lot
of helos.
Yeah,
they got the Harrier.
They do. They fly F-18s as well, and they've got they had probably the greatest aircraft of all time, the Warthog, which is now retired or being regened. But anyway, there's a lot of different aspects to it that they will fly for in support of their troops. So anyway,
I'm just making sure that the video's still going.
Is it still going?
No. I'm sure it is.
Man, we're going.
I don't know how to find it. Anyway, it's
equilibrium. Equilibrium is bringing something to a state of
it is still going.
What is it? What would you call it? Equilibrium is bringing something to a state that is not transitioning any further, right? It's stable and it's balanced, and it's no longer reacting or trying to transition out of or into a different state. That's the best way I can describe it. So, but that's
ice.
What's that?
So ice.
Ice.
Well, ice is always trying to transition to a state.
To a
very scientific podcast today.
Yeah.
And military. We're talking history.
We are.
Stats. We're talking everything.
We're talking reverence. We're pretty much covering all the bases.
Equilibrium. Here. Also, equilibrium isn't there a human attribute of equilibrium?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is that?
Balance. Well, yeah, your balance for your inner ear.
Your inner ear, equilibrium.
It creates equilibrium. That
have you ever had vertigo?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Sucks, man.
I think it lasted about a month, on and off. Just fucking awful.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that are worse. Obviously, painful things are worse. But vertigo sucks.
Vertigo's tough, man.
It is tough.
Vertigo makes you feel like you're dizzy when you're not even moving, right? When you're laying down or you're sitting up or whatever. And just to change states, like it's happened to me sometimes when I wake up in the morning, and I don't know why. In the last couple of years, and I'll go to sit up out of the bed, and it'll give me like the bed spins. It'll be like, holy crap! I don't even know if I can walk.
I had damaged some of the hair in my eardrum when I was in Hawaii for Brian's wedding. not Chuggalo, but Brian, great guy,
Oh yeah.
brother-in-law, and I had gotten ocean water in my ear. It got infected, and then once that cleared up, about a week later, then I started getting vertigo, and it turns out that I had damaged some of the hairs in there. That the hair is like what balances you and it like keeps your hearing. You know, the hairs vibrate, and that's what hearing is. The vibration of the hairs inside your eardrum, apparently. I'm not a scientist. I am actually a scientist. I just am not an ear scientist.
We went to the urgent care together, and when you had that.
Yeah, we went to urgent care in Hawaii because it happened instantly. I got that infection.
Yeah, I remember that.
Don't get ocean water inside your eardrum.
No, it'll mess you up.
It's painful.
It'll mess you up, man. It's hard to get rid of too. I mean.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Don't trust the internet either. Don't trust the internet.
Don't trust the internet.
They act like the ear canal is this complicated maze of things. But man, I'll tell you, I did the moves they told me to do. They being the internet.
It worked,
I think
right?
it got way worse.
Oh, it got worse?
Oh, it got way worse.
I couldn't remember if it
it's
worked
like tilt
or
your
not.
head this way, then that way, then do this.
I remember him telling you, you're supposed to lay on your back, tilt your head back, then you go over to the side.
Yeah, you gotta lay on your back. Yeah, you gotta do like a headstand. It was insane, and none of it worked. I had a bad infection.
I remember that. Yeah.
Anyway, that's that. And gross as it is, this last comment before we actually start talking about something related to the podcast. When I took off from Hawaii in the plane, and we hit the altitude where your ears start to pop.
Yeah.
Literally, all of it poured out of my ear.
Really?
Water, earwax, everything, and I just like held a napkin to my ear. It was disgusting, and the napkin was like soaked. It was like that much like fluid and just, you know,
that's weird.
whatever my body was feeding my ear to fight the infection. It was disgusting, and it just like, but then when we landed, it started filling back up. So whatever was in my body was pushing into the ear canal, it's continued to do that for another few days.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing's worse. I mean, yeah, no, things are worse. Like death is worse.
Yeah.
Probably.
But it's unsettling though, because there's not a hell of a lot you can do about it.
When you have an ear infection, your whole face gets stiff and like muggy, and your hearing's bad, and you're sweating all the time. It was miserable.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about beer. Equilibrium Brewing out of Midtown.
Midtown.
Not Middletown for those Ohioans. Midtown, New York.
New York. Not sure where Midtown is.
Probably in between two things.
You think?
In between. Oh, it is Middletown.
Middletown.
It is Middletown, New York.
What do you know?
I fucked it up. It's Middletown, New York. Probably in between two other towns.
John figured that out by science.
Yeah.
Middletown.
The science of reading.
Yeah, the science of reading. Yeah. Exactly. Middletown.
Experience Equilibrium Scan Me. Well, my phone is recording, so I can't scan it. But
no, don't trust the internet.
Purchase cold, trade cold, keep cold.
Keep cold.
If not cold, ask why. I'll tell you why. Because Barrel House keeps the majority of their beer on the shelf.
True enough.
So it wasn't cold. All right.
All right.
Why don't you kick us off with a little bit of Flavor Town?
All right.
Descriptions.
Oh, do you want to do can art first?
No, I'll do it when I go.
Okay. All right. Flavor-wise, first thing you taste is some hop bite. I get that bitterness of the hop bite right up front. So you know you're tasting. You're in an IPA, an American IPA. A little West Coast-ish, I might say, because of the hop bite there.
I would agree.
So I tend to, some folks like them, some don't. I tend to like the West Coast. I've kind of moved away from them though. In the last couple of years, I've tried a lot of other different beers, a lot of which John has turned me on to, like the sours and whatnot. But I still like to return to them every once in a while. But it reminds me when I do have one, just they're a little bit out of balance, right? You're getting a lot of hop bite and less of other things because there's so much bitterness in there. There's so much hop bite in there that it does tend to overshadow and cover up a lot of some of the other great flavors in there. I can taste the maltiness underneath there. It's good, solid, a little bit of sweetness. This one I think is probably less residual sweetness and a little bit more dryness I'm tasting on it.
Yeah.
And but definitely that characteristic hop bite that you expect from a West Coast, and No flavors in it, and nothing funky like I tasted in the last 2 days of beers that I tasted. It's just a straight up, really solid example, I would say, of a West Coast IPA. To me, that's my impression. It's
fair
definitely
enough.
not a juicy. It's not an English. It's not a hazy. It's definitely a straight up the middle double. A single or double, kind of the baseball terminologies in my view. Um, yeah, that's it. It's I like it. It's good. It's to me like that would be something I could drink again and again, even kind of on a daily basis. So I'm liking it. It's not, to me, it's not spectacular that I would say, wow, that's the best IPA I've had all year. It also doesn't suck. So it's going to be, I'm still cogitating on my rating, but it's going to be somewhere in the middle there.
All right, you can save it, and I'll get my score out.
Yeah, I'll save it. Let's
see.
For a moment.
Yeah. All right, let's do some can art.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
Do it.
There's the can art.
It's on fire.
This is the can art boner segment brought to you by Barrel House, because Barrel House is going to sponsor everything during the Advent calendar, even
That's
though
true.
They haven't paid us. They have granted us the privilege of using their facilities.
You know what? They've been so good to us over the last several years.
Just awesome.
They've done an incredible job setting us up, surprising us. The vast majority of what they've selected for us, it's all been blind. We haven't directed or told them anything to pick. We've told them use your own liberties to sort of pick and choose whatever beers you think are appropriate that you would have us drink. A good variety of beers. They've always done that. They're just a really solid organization. So anyone who's listening to this that hasn't been to the Barrel House, you really owe it to yourself to get down there. They're a great organization. They're a great bunch of people. Really fun to hang out with and talk to. They've got just about every kind of damn beer you can imagine in the world. Tons of beers I've never heard of before. Lots of great local and regional microbrewed beers, as well as other beers from all over the world.
Macro-brewed beers, even.
Yeah, macro-brewed beers.
All kinds of
they've
levels.
they've got beers from all over the world. It's not just
they've got some global stuff.
Yeah,
they got wine too.
They do. Although I don't think I've ever had a single.
I've never even looked at the wine there.
Me neither. And I love wine, by the way, but that's how great their beer
I'm
selection
not a big
is.
wine. Yeah, their beer selection is it is. Is it second to none? Perhaps.
Pretty close.
Perhaps. The key to Barrel House that makes it, even if its selection mirrors that of the other two key places we discuss on this podcast, one being Pat's Hall's Corner. Hall's Corner. Pat. It's not Pat's Hall's Corner. Pat is the owner of Hall's Corner.
Yeah.
And the other being Arrow Wine and Spirits, which has a extended collection of beer. I would call it an extended. It would be like the Encyclopedia Britannica, but it's the extra edition that has like the numbers. Not just A through Z.
Yeah.
The thing that separates Barrel House from the rest is your ability to sit and drink.
Yep.
They will cool your beer in a Cooper cooler. They will allow you to sit there and drink. Then they also have taps, which Pat's does not have, and Arrow does not have either.
And they have a giant list on the board, chalkboard, and that thing's changing every freaking day.
Changes 22, I think, beers.
Yep.
And so Dorothy Lane has taps, but they don't have the selection that those other three places have. So there's kind of there's a balance between all these places, except at Barrel House you get it all.
Yep.
That's what's great about Barrel House.
Yep.
So frequent there as much as you can.
Absolutely.
As frequently as you can. Now, Can Art Boner. This is a solar flare. This is basically what they're imaging here, and I can only make the assumption that this is a artist's rendering of a solar flare. I don't know that this would be an authentic picture because of the proximity you'd have to be to capture this photo to the sun.
Yeah.
Now I do want to be corrected on this if I'm wrong, but a solar flare is not fire. It is not. What it is, electromagnetic radiation, some within the visible spectrum, that is light essentially.
Yep.
It is not, the electromagnetic radiation that is emitting from the sun, while it's called a solar flare, is not in traditional sense like a fire flare. It's just radiation.
Yep.
And that's why it affects us
Yep.
on Earth. And then I'd heard, I don't know if I heard this in a YouTube video, but in 1899 there was a destructive one that if we had the infrastructure we have today would have wiped out our technology. Is that true?
That's true.
1899. And there's no telling when the next one would be. Can't predict those.
But there's going to be one.
There
There's
should
already
be
been
one. There's been some.
There's been some big ones
We
in
were
the last
prepared
2
for 'em.
years. But
We put a giant tarp over the Earth for that one day.
you know, we've been talking about for 20 years now. Our inept folks in Washington have been talking a great deal about having to upgrade our infrastructure, for example, and absolutely nothing has been done. The problem with that is that the next time a solar flare happens, we are completely at risk. That it could literally wipe out a huge sector of our power grid for a long period of time. They're not easily fixed because the technology that we have in place is ancient. It's 30, 40, 50 years old. In some places more than that, right? So, you know, if a solar flare hits and all that radiation knocks out the power grid across a huge swath of the country, we'd be in deep doo-doo.
We're in
And
deep doo-doo.
so, you know, it's just one of those things.
Microwave radiation.
Lots of
It'll fry our satellites.
It'll fry. It'll
just like if you put a satellite in the microwave.
Oh yeah, and it's not just
Which I've done.
It's super intense levels of all electromagnetic radiation, like John said. So
the whole spectrum.
So there's like ultraviolet, infrared, microwave radiation, other radio frequencies that'll fry the radios, and there's also cosmic rays, gamma rays, X-rays, stuff that'll mess us up, our DNA and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, thank God we have the Earth's magnetic field and the Van Allen belts to protect us from some of it, a lot of it.
Thank goodness.
But these will be so powerful that there'll be a giant breakthrough and through the magnetic field of the Earth, and it'll cause a lot of damage. So anyway.
Let's hope that our
let's keep
enormous
drinking.
amount of pollution blocks the radiation.
Yeah, we need more carbon.
Maybe our pollution will save us from the
We need
solar
more carbon,
flare.
not less.
More carbon.
More carbon.
More carbon. I mean, all things are carbon.
That's right.
So that's the
Sorry.
can art. Very, very intense can art there. I love it. I think imagery of stars in general is always very nice. We saw the first image of a black hole, I think in 2022 or 21. I can't remember what year it was. It was wonderful. And I think, wasn't COVID one of the reasons why that was so successful was the fact that all of those laboratories could sync together? I don't know. Anyway, it's for a different time. But that picture of a black hole, that first high-def picture of a black hole was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And now they got like the James Webb telescope
and COVID really was a form of black hole. It was a black hole of American taxpayer monies going to a Chinese lab called in Wuhan. It really is
that's a different conversation.
That's
that
a different
probably most of our
go
listeners don't want to talk about.
Yeah, we don't want to go there now. But
all right.
Anyway.
So that's the can art boner segment.
Yeah.
There's some things I agree about with SFIL on this beer. There's some things I disagree about. I think this beer is labeled appropriately as an IPA because it does have some hop punch that you would get from a West Coast. But I do also think that it has that kind of dull, cloudy delivery of a New England. It also there are undertones of some sort of citrus fruit, not grapefruit. But citrus, nonetheless, I think it's there, it's prevalent, and it's hidden behind the hops. The hops are the first thing. The dryness, not dry hops, but dryness of the beer. The hops, that's the first thing you get on the breath and kind of On the back of your tongue, there's a little citrus. There's a little haziness, the cloudiness. I'm not really sure how else I can describe it.
No, that's a really good call.
But it's reflected in the color as well. It's a little cloudy. I mean, it's definitely cloudy. But I don't think that this falls on either side. It's not West Coast. It's not East Coast. It's IPA. It's right in the middle. And it's not geographically in the middle, because that's not how this works. Even though it is West Coast and New England.
Yep.
There's no middle coast.
Nope.
You know? No non-coast. No Mississippi River IPA. Although that'd be a sweet name for a beer.
Mississippi. Oh.
Mississippi River IPA. Think about that. Think about that, brewers. Think about that, MIT. You know,
MIT.
Equilibrium.
John, you got a great point. I will happily concede that you made me think about it, and I am tasting a little citrus in there.
Let me ask you. Yeah, there is a little citrus in there, right?
Grapefruit and a little lemon. I think grapefruit is in there.
Grapefruit, lemon.
Grapefruit. And
I don't think I get the grapefruit. The lemon I could see.
Yep. The grapefruit I get because it makes my, when I have the grapefruit's so interesting. I love grapefruit, but it's got that sweetness. You get a lot of sweetness, but you also get that just the pucker factor.
Bitter rush.
Yeah, and it's got a little of both. Thanks to the hops, but that's a really good call.
Thanks. So I do think that this beer has a very distinct profile.
Yeah.
But I think it's labeled correctly. It's an IPA. Unlike the beer from day 3, which I can't remember right off the top of my head, which was labeled as a West Coast IPA, which was 100% a New England IPA. And that is how I scored it. I don't know what you thought about that beer, but we can talk about that later. I don't know if you got your score ready, so I don't bias it.
Yep, I do.
All right, let me make sure I got mine locked in. I do have my score locked in. Who you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I'll go.
All right. Score time.
It's on the quarter point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kind of between a 3.75 and a 4, so I'm going to go with 3.75. Good beer, good IPA. I would definitely have it again. I like the combination of things and the drinkability of it. Again, not the most spectacular IPA I've ever had, but a really classic and great example of one, however. It's not overpowering or overwhelming, not too over-the-top bitter, not too over-the-top sour. Just got a lot of great things going on for it. 3.75.
3.75. Well, we're close. We're close together. And I will say, ice cold, I like where this beer is at. As it warms up, not so much. And we go over this a lot on the mothership, Matt and I think we've talked about it before. It is just extraordinarily difficult for an IPA to stand out.
Yep.
And to be in the 4s, I mean, you got to be exceptional. And not that this beer is not brewed exceptionally well. Not that the science doesn't, prove its point here. It does. This is a great scientific beer. It's a 3.5 because it is forgettable for all the right reasons.
Yep.
It is a well-made IPA, and it fits within the IPA category, and it is in a class of millions.
Yep.
And that is the unfortunate truth about IPAs. They are great. I order them. I prefer them. So this is not me knocking IPAs. This is me saying all IPAs will pretty much be in the middle of the score spectrum unless you do something insane, extraordinary, different. You have to set yourself apart.
That's right.
And sometimes not setting yourself apart is the smart move. And in this case, I believe it was. Way to not set yourself apart. You made a good beer, 3.5.
I agree with that sentiment. I think I said I said on episode 3, in fact, that the same exact thing. It's really hard for an IPA to stand out because there are so many damn good ones. Mm-hmm. If you don't make a really good IPA, you're going to get scored really lowly, and not just by us, by everybody, because there's so many damn good ones out there to drink. But by the same token, it's also hard to get a really good score and stand out. What I like about these guys is that they've found they found an equilibrium in a way
Yeah.
between what John said, a West Coast and a New England IPA. You get a lot of the best of both, which is really hard to find. You really don't see that in a lot
That's
of
true. You
a
don't
lot
see
of
that often.
IPAs. No, you don't see that very often. And that's how good the balance is in this beer. So by saying a 3.75 for me, that's definitely not a knock on this beer.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a real solid beer.
Solid beer.
Yep.
It's good. This
Yep.
is that was it. That's day 7. We should save some of this conversation for the next 20 days or so that we have left.
Exactly. Yep.
Math in public. What do we got? 17 days left. 18 days, something like that.
17 days.
17 days.
It's been a week now. Not for you
Been a
and
week.
I.
It's been a week. Well, it's been a week otherwise.
Yeah.
And that is it. I've been enjoying the videos from all the other Chuggalos. If you're a viewer and not participating, go watch all of these. If you've made it this far through our video, shit, you probably are watching all the other ones because you've made it this far. But Stev's doing an exceptional job. Matt's doing an exceptional job. All the Wisconsinites are doing an exceptional job. I love what Matt's doing with the mixed picture-in-picture kind of thing. Haven't watched all of the Up North crew ones yet, and I'm guessing there's probably some shots at me in there somewhere, because there always is, and that's okay. I'm confident in myself and my abilities. Love it. This is the best time of year to drink beer.
It is great.
That's it. Thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow.
Day 8 tomorrow. Later.